Should prosecutors decide whether the officers they work with should face charges for potential wrongdoing, or should that be up to grand juries? A Coloradan is convicted of pocketing donations from Trump supporters. Our state is one of only 3 to opt out of a national effort to track kids' mental health. How does that make sense, given the crisis here? And the only televised debate in the U.S. Senate race is tonight. We're live from Colorado State University in Fort Collins on Next. Police shootings in Colorado are under more scrutiny than ever. One key question is whether prosecutors, who often work closely with the law enforcement officers under scrutiny, should be the ones to make a decision on whether those same officers face charges. Up in Clear Creek County, it's going to be a grand jury that decides whether a deputy acted wrongly when he shot and killed Christian Glass, who called 911 for help during a mental health episode. Our Steve Stager talked with a former district attorney who wondered if prosecutors shouldn't be the ones making that call.
Step out of the car now. I will break the window. Step out of the car.
By now, a lot of people have seen the video of a deputy shooting and killing 22-year-old Christian Glass, who is in the midst of a mental health crisis. The DA in Clear Creek County wants 12 more to see it, impaneling a grand jury to make the final decision in whether the deputy should be charged. It is imperative that we reach the right decision and not rush into judgment, she said in a statement.
You turn to grand juries when you need their subpoena power, when you don't have the full picture, and you have to bring in records and things that the police do not have access to.
Former Denver DA Mitch Morrissey never used a grand jury to decide a police shooting case in his 12 years in office, and he says he doesn't understand why so many do now.
In most police shootings, everything is clear with the technology and the cameras that the officers wear, with the sound being recorded. It's usually not the case that you need anything more to make a decision than you already have. It's like asking amateurs to make a decision when you have a professional that you voted in to run the district attorney's office not making a decision.
Some people say, well, it's good to involve the community.
9 News legal analyst Whitney Traylor believes the DA has enough evidence to make a decision, but he understands the extra step to be cautious.
It's kind of a no-win situation. Prosecuting police is still very, very difficult. It's challenging in a lot of ways, politically and otherwise.
It's a difficult situation to be in, but it's rarely the appropriate thing to do when you have all the evidence in front of you.
Glass's family said through a statement that they support the efforts and diligence of the DA. Another defense attorney unrelated to that case told me today they find the DA's turn to the grand jury because they can tip the scales the way they want, and then whatever happens is blessed through the decision of the grand jury. Kyle.
You know, I think, Steve, if nothing else, there's so much more public attention on how this process works, and so many more people asking if folks who have pre-existing working relationships should be the ones making these decisions.
Well, and in this case, Mitch Morrissey says with all of that attention on the cases right now, that underscores the need for transparency, which you really don't get with a grand jury, because if a grand jury decides not to press charges in a case, a lot of that is kept secret because grand jurors are sworn to secrecy. You don't really know what evidence was presented to a grand jury, Kyle.
Useful to hear those pros and cons. Steve Stager, thank you very much. The Great Wall, not the Chinese one, the one that President Trump wanted to build on our southern border, reached all the way to Colorado, Castle Rock specifically, and a man named Tim Shea, who just today was convicted of crimes for pocketing the money that Trump supporters gave him to privately finish the border wall. The conviction came on day 5 of Shea's second trial following a hung jury. He was found guilty on conspiracy to commit wire fraud and conspiracy to launder money. He was the final defendant left in that case, the Build the Wall case. Former Trump advisor Steve Bannon was pardoned by Trump himself. 2 others pleaded guilty. Shea's going to get sentenced in January. Perhaps you noticed that we are up in Fort Collins tonight, Colorado State University, for the last debate in our series before Election Day. This is the only televised debate in the U.S. Senate race between Democratic Senator Michael Bennet and Republican Joe O'Dea. A large issue in this race has been both men's varying degrees of allegiance to the standard bearers of their party, President Joe Biden and former President Trump, despite the fact that both of those men are unpopular with voters in Colorado. Our unprecedented series of 6 debates wraps up tonight. 7 o'clock is the debate between Democratic Senator Michael Bennet and Republican challenger Joe O'Dea. It airs here commercial-free on 9 News. So Bennet, of course, is Colorado's senior senator at this point. He's been in office 13 years, since 2009. If reelected and serving a full term, he'd become Colorado's longest-serving senator. This time around, this election year, he is leaning into his close ties with President Biden, even though polls show the majority of Coloradans do not approve of the job that Biden is doing in office. I asked Bennet about that earlier this month.
I'm extremely grateful that he ran for president because I think he was the only American out of 330 million people who could have beaten Donald Trump. And I think it would have been catastrophic for our country if Donald Trump had been reelected president. And I think if Joe Biden decides that he's up to it and decides that he's going to run again, I think he'd beat Donald Trump again, and we need to.
If he asked you whether he should run again, what would you tell him?
I'd tell him it's up to him.
Bennett's Republican challenger Joe O'Dea is a self-proclaimed political outsider. He's a business guy. He owns a construction company. Throughout the campaign, he has reiterated his preference that former President Trump not run for re-election in 2024, though O'Dea no longer says out loud what he used to say, which is that if push comes to shove and Trump is the GOP nominee, O'Dea would vote for Trump.
Look, I've been clear. I don't want Trump to run. I don't want Biden to run. I think that tears our country apart. I'm not going to move our country forward by voting for him. No, we need to make sure that our country is moving forward.
Who's the him in that sentence? I missed something there.
Well, I don't believe either one of them should run, Trump or Biden. I don't want either one of them.
The general thought on this race, based on the publicly available polling and also what both the Bennet and O'Dea campaigns are saying, is that right now this is a race that leans towards Bennet, but is winnable for O'Dea. We know that with Coloradans having voted for 2 weeks already and limited time left until Election Day, there are only going to be so many opportunities for O'Dea to change the trajectory of this race in a meaningful way. A live debate, an hour-long, broadcast to every corner of Colorado thanks to our statewide partners. This is one of O'Dea's best chances to change the trajectory of the race, if not his only one. All I'm saying is it's probably worth watching at 7 o'clock. I don't know. If you want a real nerdy deep dive into Colorado politics and specifically how we compare to other states, like what happened in Virginia with Republicans, I have a recommendation for you. Earlier this week, I was talking with Chuck Todd, host of NBC's Meet the Press. We talked about Joe O'Dea's chances to pull the upset in the Senate race. We talked about why Colorado's governor's race seems so completely uncompetitive this year. And we also talked about whether Republicans in Colorado, who are trying to come up off the mat, can stage a comeback here like they did in Virginia behind Governor Glenn Youngkin. It's the latest episode of the Chuck Todd Cast. It's available on Spotify, and we also put a link on the next Facebook page. Hey, I want to thank you for what you have been doing for the people of Grand County for the last couple of days. It has been just about 2 years since the East Troublesome fire burned through that community overnight and took 366 homes. The money raised to help the people of Grand County recover is mostly gone at this point, 2 years in. Almost 80% of it has been distributed to people in the community. So this week, Your Word of Thanks campaign is raising money for the Grand County Wildfire Fund, administered by the Grand Foundation. And you have raised more than $17,000 for that purpose in the last couple of days. This is money that's going to help people who are just getting into the rebuilding process, and that's where most of the fire survivors are right now. And our donations will also help mitigate against future wildfires in that community. If you scan the QR code on your screen, you'll get that link to donate, or you can also find it on the next section of 9news.com or on all of our social media pages. I apologize, our text link function is not working again this week. We're trying to get that fixed for you. Just try to use that QR code. Scan it with your camera phone. I promise you it works. Here's the deal. Your Word of Thanks donations this week are not only helping with the recovery effort in Grand County, they're letting the folks there who tell me that they feel overshadowed and forgotten because of the Marshall Fire, you're letting those folks know they are not forgotten. The numbers show Colorado's kids are facing a mental health crisis. Well, that's what the numbers did show before the state opted out of a national effort to track youth mental health.
We really need to know what this is looking like on a national level.
We're looking for answers on why Colorado is not participating. And if you thought this state settled the marijuana sales issue, check out the Springs, because it's like the biggest election year fight down there. That's next. Back from CSU in Fort Collins, where preparations continue for tonight's U.S. Senate debate at 7 o'clock on 9 News. So there is an acknowledged mental health crisis among Colorado's kids right now. So it's crucial to know where resources should be directed to save lives. What a time for Colorado to opt out of a national effort to study kids' mental health. Our Anusha Roy is asking why.
There is a very real impact tied to data gathered through surveys,
disparities for health outcomes for LGBTQ+ youth,
and what kind of help kids get.
Funding through our Office of Suicide Prevention to incorporate programs like Sources of Strength in schools.
Emily Fine with the Department of Health said Colorado started participating in the CDC's state-level Youth Risk Behavior Survey in 1991, and that now is the right time to opt out of the next CDC survey and focus more on its own statewide survey. This is even as clinical psychologist Dr. Jody Thomas said we are still in the middle of a mental health emergency for kids.
We're not out of that emergency at all.
That urgency for the best data possible,
Tough decision.
is a part of the reason Colorado wanted to focus on its own Healthy Kids Colorado survey.
We had a tough survey year in 2021. We did not achieve regional results for every region in Colorado. And so we really want to direct resources to getting that more participation at the local level.
It's that local data that schools find most useful to help their kids, but don't get from the CDC survey that offers a statewide look. So last year, only 22 schools participated. At the same time, the state survey returned school and district-specific information in 6 weeks. 340 schools participated and more than 100,000 kids.
I really get their point, but I'm also like, we really need to know what this is looking like on a national level.
That is the initial reaction from mental health advocates we talked to today, saying more complete national data will help fund federal programs and innovation that can then trickle down to kids in Colorado.
Skyrocketing need and desire for services.
But experts also realize that these surveys are asking sensitive questions, and having more than one can complicate participation.
That may just be perceived by, decision makers as going too far or asking too much.
The decision to opt out was actually backed by the Department of Education, Public Safety, and Human Services. Colorado is now one of 3 states that opted out for this next round of surveys. And Vincent Atchity, who you just heard from, said what's really interesting is the other 2 states, Florida and Idaho, don't necessarily have that same robust statewide survey like we do in Colorado. And both said that that state survey is really comprehensive, Kyle, and it is reaching a lot of kids.
So we shouldn't end up being some black hole of numbers.
Right. I mean, when we talked to the CDC today, they said they're worried about missing out on critical information, but Colorado is saying, well, they're going to share all of their data. They're asking similar questions, so they should fit right in along with what the CDC is doing. And a couple of our high schools will still be surveyed by the CDC. Ultimately, the state, Kyle, is going to be reassessing if this works long term or not.
Anusha, thank you. Colorado Springs voters are going to vote in November on whether to allow recreational marijuana sales. If they decide to set their clocks forward from 2014, they will join much of the rest of the state in selling legal recreational pot. This week, though, the all-Republican county commissioners group in El Paso County came out against this idea of recreational marijuana sales. They pointed to rising crime. But actually, their biggest concern is not the marijuana. They say it's fentanyl. The Republican commissioners claim that marijuana is going to be laced with fentanyl and then sold to young people. And they think that cartels will use recreational marijuana to move harder drugs into the area.
The people who are supporting this will say, well, there's no proof of causation. Well, okay, correlation should scare enough people. The cartels will utilize the legal aspect of this to mask other illicit drug activities or other illicit activities. In many cases, we know coming up through our southern border, we do have fentanyl, which is still an issue. They're going to use the same routes.
Other conservative leaders in the Springs area are equally concerned. Colorado Springs Mayor John Suthers, and he's taken out an ad with the DA down there asking people to oppose recreational marijuana sales. He thinks it could hurt that region's cooperation with the military. Supporters of the measure say people in Colorado Springs are enjoying legal recreational marijuana. They're just going outside the area to buy it, so the tax revenue goes elsewhere. Let's leave the politics behind and go searching for your good news on a Friday.
My good news is I lost a tooth at zoo.
That'll do. Let's smile at the end of a long week, shall we? Next. Whether we're at home in the studio or on the road somewhere like at CSU in Fort Collins, we do not let a Friday go by without your good news. This is the 302nd Friday that we've taken our camera and our favorite question somewhere in the community. This time, Denver Zoo.
Today we came to celebrate with our friends at the zoo for my son turning 8.
I like witches.
What's your good news?
I came to Charlotte. I came to visit my mom. That's why I came here, because she was in a conference and I didn't know what she was doing here, so I came to visit her so she wasn't lonely.
Okay, now close your eye. Now open your jacket, get some pumpkin in there.
We're here for my brother's birthday party. My good news is that we got all of our ski gear for ski season and I'm ready to ski. My good news is I got my belt in martial arts.
My really boring adult good news is that Allstate paid us to finish our basement after a flood, and it's getting done today.
I do have good news.
My good news is, well, I lost a tooth out there, and it's right here. My good news is that I'm undefeated in soccer so far. My good news is I went to Great Wolf Lodge.
My good news is I am at Denver Zoo and a beautiful weather. I just love it. Hang out with kids and seem like they have a good time. And I can have them help me carving pumpkins. That's my good news.
Never fails to satisfy. Hey, we're back with your feedback and a final look ahead to tonight's U.S. Senate debate at 7 o'clock. Next. We will be back here in 30 minutes' time at 7 o'clock for our final debate of the election season. Democratic Senator Michael Bennet and his Republican challenger Joe O'Dea debate live from CSU in Fort Collins. Their only televised debate will be seen statewide, 7 o'clock, right here on 9 News. Diego writes in to say, will this be streamed on the app? Yes, Diego, it will. It will be on 9 News Plus and on 9news.com. And Paul writes in to say, I'm looking forward to this one. I am too, Paul. 30 minutes. Get your popcorn ready. See you at 7. Good work, Mallory.